They say that if you truly want to meet God, you must be ready to lose everything that isn't real. This is not just a metaphor, it's a journey, one that doesn't begin in temples or end in books. It begins in longing, and it ends in silence. This is the story of a man who left behind his home, his name, and everything he thought he knew, to meet the one his soul had always longed for. But what he found was not what he expected. It was something far more intimate. Something that lived in the spaces he had always ignored. He was not a mystic, not a scholar, not a man of religion or fame. He was simply a man haunted by a question: where is God? Began as a whisper in his childhood. He saw people praying, chanting, obeying, but somehow, something felt hollow. He grew older, read sacred books, followed traditions, listened to preachers. Still, the whisper grew louder: where is God? Not the God of politics, not the God of punishment or reward, but the real one, the one who breathes stars into existence and yet lives quietly inside every living thing. One morning, he woke just before sunrise. The world was still asleep, and for the first time in his life, he realized something. If he didn't leave now, truly leave, he never would. Not just physically, but inwardly. He had to empty himself of everything that stood between him and the truth. And so, without drama or farewell, he walked away from everything he knew. He wandered for years. He crossed mountains, deserts, jungles, cities. He sought out sages, monks, priests, fakirs. He fasted, meditated, offered prayers, repeated mantras. He performed every ritual he was told might bring him closer to the divine. And though he gained knowledge, something still escaped him. Each time he thought he was close, a shadow fell. The presence he sought would vanish. He began to grow desperate. How many more mountains must he climb? How many more rules must he follow? The God he was chasing seemed always one step ahead, always hidden behind someone else's voice. And then, one night, he reached the edge of a vast, lifeless desert. The locals warned him, "You won't come back from there. It's not a place for seekers. It's a place of endings." But he went anyway, not because he was brave, but because he had nothing left to lose. He walked for days. His food ran out. His water disappeared. His feet bled. His lips cracked. His skin burned by day and froze by night. And finally, he collapsed. The sand accepted his body like a grave. Above him, the stars looked down, cold and silent. And there, as he drifted between consciousness and sleep, he saw a figure, an old dervish dressed in tattered robes, sitting quietly beside a small fire. The dervish said nothing, just stared into the flames. The man tried to speak, but his voice cracked. The dervish gently handed him a bowl of water. They sat for hours, maybe longer. The seeker had lost all sense of time. Finally, the dervish spoke. "Why are you here?" The man answered, tears in his eyes. "I have searched the world for God. I have walked away from everything. I've been taught, tested, humbled, but I have found nothing. Nothing but silence." The dervish looked at him, and his eyes held something infinite. He replied, "Then silence is what you need to hear." They said nothing more. And in that silence, something began to change inside the man. The silence wasn't empty. It was alive. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the presence of everything. In the quiet, the man heard things he had never listened to before. The rustle of wind on sand, the rhythm of his breath, the beat of his heart. For the first time, he realized how much noise he had carried within him. Days passed. The dervish never preached, never instructed. He just lived, simply, mindfully, the way he drank water, the way he tended the fire, the way he gazed at the stars. Everything he did was prayer, though he never folded his hands. One morning, the man asked, "Why don't you teach me?" The dervish smiled. "You're being taught, not by me, by the stillness that's always been within you. I just sit here so you'll stop running long enough to notice it." And in that moment, something opened in the man's heart. He began to see. The trees did not speak, yet they taught surrender. The wind did not argue, yet it taught freedom. The stars did not lead, yet they taught humility. He had spent his whole life searching for God, as if God were somewhere else, as if God were an object to be grasped, a treasure to be earned. But slowly, he began to see. God was never missing. God had always been exactly where he was not looking, in the breath, in the stillness, in the awareness behind every thought. The dervish said to him one night, "You traveled the world to find the silence that was always inside you, but you had to lose the world first to hear it." The man laughed, a deep, quiet laugh, the kind that rises not from the belly, from the soul. And that night, he slept without questions for the first time in his life. My friend, before we continue, I want to thank you for walking this far with me through the story. If these words have stirred something in you, a memory, a longing, a silence, consider subscribing to this channel and liking this video. Your support helps us share more stories like this one, inspired by the teachings of Baba Yahya Khan. Now let's return to the journey. The man eventually returned to his city. But he was not the same. His walk was slower, his gaze softer. People asked where he had been. He smiled but said nothing. He no longer felt the need to prove or preach. He did not argue. He did not quote. He simply lived, fully present, deeply aware. He could see God in the eyes of a crying child, in the steam rising from tea, in the silence after laughter. And sometimes, when no one was watching, he would sit and close his eyes. And there, in the stillness, he would return home again. Baba Yahya once said, "To meet the eternal, one must vanish completely, not the body, but the identity. The name, the history, the pride, the noise, all of it must burn away. Only then will you see what has always been looking through your eyes." So perhaps the journey is not one of gaining, but of losing. Not one of collecting knowledge, but of letting go of what we thought we knew. Not one of becoming someone, but of realizing there was no one to become. The man in our story learned that God is not a destination. God is the space in which the question disappears, the silence in which love speaks, the moment where the seeker stops seeking and simply becomes. And so I leave you with this. In your own life, in your own heart, when was the last time you sat quietly and asked nothing, wanted nothing, proved nothing? What if God has been waiting there, not at the end of your journey, but at the center of your stillness? So now, after this story ends, don't rush. Let it settle, let it breathe in you. Sit with the silence, trust it, and maybe, just maybe, you'll hear something that's been calling you all along. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And until next time, stay still, stay open, and remember what you are seeking is already within you.